Have you ever felt like you were being watched, but when you looked around, no one was there? Imagine the chilling feeling of knowing something isn't quite right, but you can't put your finger on it. Now imagine that same feeling creeping into your life every single night, making you question your sanity. This is what happened to Lara, a young cashier who worked the late shift at a 24-hour convenience store in a quiet town. Lara didn't think much about her job. It was a small town, peaceful enough. People came and went, and for the most part, she just rang up their items and sent them on their way. She had always been the kind of person who stayed out of the way, keeping to herself. But one evening, something happened that changed everything. It was late, around 2:30 a.m., when the old man came in. He shuffled through the door slowly, his movements stiff and deliberate. Lara glanced up from her phone screen, expecting the usual late-night customer. Someone looking for snacks or cigarettes. But the man wasn't like the others. He wasn't buying junk food or a lottery ticket. He approached the counter with a single bottle of milk in his hands, his eyes barely meeting hers. She didn't notice anything unusual at first, just his old, tired face and the smell of his stale clothes that lingered in the air as he set the milk down. "Will that be all?" Lara asked, her voice sharp in the quiet store. The man nodded slowly, his hands trembling slightly as he fumbled for his wallet. She could feel a strange stillness in the air as she rang him up. He didn't speak a word. There was an odd silence between them that felt heavier than it should have been. He paid, took his bottle of milk, and left, his slow steps echoing down the aisles before the door shut behind him. Lara shrugged it off. People were weird sometimes, right? She went back to her phone, texting a friend about how tired she was, but the next night the man came back. He walked in with the same slow pace, holding the same bottle of milk. It was like a repeat of the night before, except this time, Lara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Just the milk?" she asked again, trying to keep the conversation light, but the words felt empty as soon as they left her mouth. The man didn't respond, not a word, not even a glance in her direction. He paid, left, and once again, Lara was left in the silence of the store, her heart racing just a little faster than usual. She chalked it up to nerves, nothing more. But the next night when he came back again, the unease in her chest was harder to ignore. By the fourth night, Lara couldn't push away the strange feeling that gnawed at her. Every time he came in, it was the same. No words, no eye contact. He simply bought a bottle of milk and left. She tried to tell herself that she was imagining things, that maybe he was just a lonely old man. But deep down, she felt like he was always watching her. The way he lingered at the counter, how his eyes would flicker towards her when she wasn't looking. It was as though he knew something she didn't. And then one night, everything changed. It was past 3 a.m. when Lara was finishing up the last few minutes of her shift. She had started to clean the counter, her back turned to the parking lot outside. She hadn't noticed him at first, but when she turned around to grab the broom, she froze. There he was, standing in the shadows of the parking lot, staring at her. His figure was barely visible, just a silhouette against the dim light of the street lamps. The same old man. But tonight he wasn't walking away like he always did. Tonight he was watching. Lara's heart began to race, her pulse pounding in her ears. She stared back at him, unable to look away. For a moment, neither of them moved. She couldn't bring herself to go outside and confront him. The silence between them felt suffocating. Finally, she swallowed hard and turned back to the counter, trying to focus on cleaning. But the feeling didn't leave. The unsettling sense of being watched lingered in the air like an invisible cloud, pressing down on her chest. It was when she went to lock up for the night that she found it. The note was there on the counter, placed delicately as though it had been set there with intention. The words were simple, but they chilled her to the bone. "Don't look for the milk." Her mind raced. What did that even mean? What was going on? The man had never spoken to her, but now this note appeared, as though someone knew what she had been thinking. Was it a warning? A threat? Her fingers trembled as she reached for the note, the paper cold and crisp against her skin. Her thoughts were spinning, but she couldn't make sense of any of it. She quickly locked up the store, her thoughts running wild. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had to find out what was happening. But little did Lara know, this was only the beginning. Lara couldn't stop thinking about the note. "Don't look for the milk." The words seemed to echo in her mind, growing louder with every passing second. It wasn't just the note that unsettled her. It was the strange feeling of being watched that had lingered in her chest for days, ever since the old man started coming into the store. It was like he had been preparing her for something. But what? And why? She didn't want to go back to the store the next night. She had spent hours trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination running wild, that it was nothing more than a weird coincidence. But deep down, she knew she had to go back. She couldn't just ignore it. Something was wrong. And it wasn't just the man, it was something deeper, something she couldn't explain. That evening, Lara found herself pacing in the small break room, her heart pounding in her chest as the clock ticked closer to midnight. Her hands were clammy, her breath shallow. When her shift started, she felt like she was walking into a trap. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled into something far beyond her control. The night passed slowly, and the unease grew worse with every minute. The familiar hum of the fluorescent lights above her felt off, like the air itself was charged with something dark. But then, at around 2:30 a.m., the door opened, and there he was, the old man. Lara's heart skipped a beat, her stomach lurching. He was holding the same bottle of milk. His tired eyes barely met hers as he shuffled to the counter, placing the bottle down silently. She wanted to ask him what was going on, but the words died on her lips. She couldn't speak. She could barely breathe. Without thinking, Lara grabbed the bottle of milk and rang it up, her hands shaking as she handed it to him. He didn't say a word. No thanks. No look of recognition. He just took the milk and walked out, disappearing into the darkness outside. But this time, Lara didn't go back to her phone. She didn't retreat into the dull comfort of the store. This time, she followed him. Her steps were slow at first, her heart racing in her chest as she stepped into the cold night air. She glanced around the parking lot, scanning the shadows, but he was nowhere to be seen. She moved quickly now, her pulse pounding in her ears as she crept toward the alley behind the store. It was a small alley, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. It smelled of damp concrete and garbage, but Lara didn't care. She had to know where he went. And then she saw it. A small, weathered bench sat at the end of the alley. But what caught her attention wasn't the bench. It was the shadowy figure slumped on the ground beside it. The old man. His body was sprawled in an unnatural position, his clothes soaked with something dark. At first, Lara thought it was some sort of illusion, something her mind was conjuring up from the fear that had been eating at her. But as she stepped closer, the reality hit her like a cold wave. The man was dead. Lara froze, her blood running cold as she stared at the body. There was no mistake. His eyes were wide open, his mouth slightly ajar, but there was no life behind them. She couldn't tear her eyes away. She had never seen anything so gruesome. Her mind raced as she struggled to comprehend what she was seeing. The old man had been dead for years. How was this even possible? The answer came as a whisper, a voice inside her head that felt like it wasn't hers. The milk is just a lure. Lara staggered back, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she tried to process everything she had just witnessed. The note, the man, the milk. It all fit together, but in a way that made no sense. Desperate for answers, she rushed back to the store. She grabbed her phone, her fingers fumbling as she searched for any information about the man. And that's when she found it. An old news article from 5 years ago. The headline was simple, but the words hit her like a punch to the gut. Elderly man found dead behind convenience store. The article described the discovery of the man's body, found in the very alley behind the store. His name was Gerald Hume, and he had died alone. His cause of death ruled as natural. But the article ended with a chilling detail. A bottle of milk was found beside his body. The world around Lara started to spin. Gerald Hume. The man who had been coming into the store every night, buying a bottle of milk. The same man who had been dead for years. How was this possible? Why was he haunting her? She looked back at the door, the bell above it ringing as it swayed in the wind. She could feel the weight of his gaze even though he wasn't there. The feeling of being watched, of being pulled towards something she didn't understand, filled her chest like a suffocating fog. And then she realized the terrifying truth. The milk wasn't just a simple object. It was a marker, a sign. The old man had been using it to lure her in, night after night. But now, with the truth exposed, she could feel his presence, closer than ever. And the worst part? He wasn't ready to let her go. As she turned back to the counter, a cold chill ran down her spine. The store had never felt so empty, so suffocating. And just before she could reach for the phone to call for help, she heard a whisper, soft but unmistakable. It came from the shadows. "Don't look for the milk." It was too late.